a list from Theater Front of all the new acquisitions that Theater Front has received. As I mentioned, we get the shipments once a month, so it rotates, so we get 4 shipments a year. And so it's nice because we know what the other institutions are getting even before they get them, so I can identify something that I know that somebody may be looking for or somebody may be interested in, and I can contact them before it actually gets in the catalog. But being apple, oranges, and Kluwats, or Handel, Haken, and Herbie Hancock, we had other considerations that we had to work out between the institutions. And one of them that they didn't have with the books because they came shelf ready was the binding. In some cases, we did all our own binding in-house. In some cases, the binding was sent to other institutions, to vendors, to binderies, and the binderies, we were adding an additional cost to this, in addition to having the score. In some cases, there wasn't staff to do the binding, and also in some cases, it wasn't really possible to really bind things in-house, especially for the new publications. We also had to consider the cataloging of this. Now, it wasn't that many scores. It's approximately 30 scores every month that come to one of the institutions. But it is a big deal at some institutions because there is no one designated that really does just music cataloging, or they have so many other things that they're doing that they don't have time to do additional work. So this was creating additional work. The book approval plan wasn't necessarily making more work for people in the end, but the score was possibly. And so we had looked at Theodore Front's, their partner records, and we tried that. We actually all decided not to use them, and we actually do the cataloging in-house. We also had to consider the research and performance needs of each college, and the colleges are the same, but we really do have different needs. One of the advantages of this plan is that our different needs change, at least at Bowdoin change, every time we get a new faculty member. So it's great that other colleges may have other interests right now, because next year or in 2 years we may have that other interest too. Now we're purchasing it. I wouldn't be purchasing it otherwise. And then also we had to look at our standing orders. When we looked at the score approval plan, this is what we came up with in some of our decisions. So first of all, the contemporary composers. This was initially why we wanted to do this approval plan. So what we did is we looked at the Groundmeyer and Pulitzer Prize winners. I had already been going back and trying to purchase all these scores for one of our faculty members because they had not been collecting consciously in the last number of years. So we selected 24 composers from this list that we want to make sure that we get everything. We went around a lot with popular music and jazz, and I'll speak to that a little bit later. We also knew that we wanted to get women composers, and we wanted to get women composers up to $1,000 a year. We had to look at score format. Because we're not necessarily performance institutions, we were more interested in mini scores and non-performance parts, so we didn't want choral octavos. We also, looking at ensembles, we had to decide how big the ensemble we wanted to be. For instance, we didn't want anything larger than quintets. And we also looked at the max cost. Initially, the max cost of each score was $100, and it changed to $75. So after we got the first few shipments, we actually met 2 or 3 times during the year, and we made further revisions about the binding, about excluding certain publishers, although I don't think any of the publishers were on our preferred list, but we were getting a number of scores from a publisher that we thought would have no or little use at our institutions. In popular music, we've gone around about this. Do we want fake books? Don't we want fake books? What kind of fake books do we want? Do we want decades? Do we want both? Do we want transcriptions? So we went around, and all of this is, being a single institution, it may be simple to make this decision, but with 3 of us, we want to make sure that we're getting the best that we can. And we're excluding some instruments. Front gives the difficulty of the score, so we excluded things that were like advanced difficulty that we thought wouldn't be used. As I said, we decreased the max cost, and then Colby wanted 25% of theirs to be popular because that's their interest at the time. The results after so part of this Mellon grant was to form this structure where we could have cooperative plans. And so they have now they have a CBD Cooperative Collection Development Committee. So we had to get this approved by this committee. And then the first shipment went to Bates in July of 2010. The shipments are totaling about $1,000, and they come on a rotating basis about once a month. I calculated to this date we've received approximately 935 scores. And so if you look at the math in that, that means that we're only paying $8.50 a score. So because we're sharing it, administrators like that kind of stuff. So that is a great cost saving. Now once again, we wouldn't necessarily be purchasing all these all the time, but we felt that it was necessary to keep current with our collections. Also, there are other cooperative collection development models that are going on right now, looking at e-sources, e-books, which are causing lots of interesting issues because of licensing between the three institutions. And also, when we look at a new database, we call the subject specialists in those areas and talk about perhaps going in together to look at possibly getting that database for a lower cost. I'll turn it over to Sharon.
So at the end of the Mellon grant, when we're getting we have this joint approval plan where we have very little duplication, and we want the culture, we're promoting the culture that, oh, this book is at Colby, and you're wanting us to buy it at Bates. Would you please think, do we really need it at Bates? So then there was the idea then of, well, maybe we want to look for a catalog that would give a CBB view. And this was also just at the time that it was a little bit past the time of Web 2.0. We weren't on the cusp, we were on the other end. But we were looking and saying, oh, we don't have all these, fancy looking word clouds and stuff like that. So, so anyway, we went through a process to have several vendors come in and show their products, and so CBB decided on Aqua Browser. So we still have Aqua Browser. It's basically a discovery system with a single search box. I mean, that's the idea that Aqua Browser is. That it's a single search box. You do this search, you get back numerous things, and then you facet. You use your facets to narrow down. And the records, we load the records nightly from the 3 local innovative catalogs, and each of us has had our problems, but we are there. Yeah, because we hit an unknown, there's a max of what you can get out of innovative, and we hit it. All 3 schools hit it at one point. So our serial holdings from Serial Solutions are loaded monthly directly from Serial Solutions into Aqua Browser. We don't have to do any of that because now Serial Solutions owns Aqua Browser, and that's why that works. Each school has its own skin, which means we can have different displays. Now, when we set up Aqua Browser, we didn't want just the single search box. We asked them to give us scopes, so our CBB cat is scoped, and we also included advanced searches so that you don't just have to use the basic search box. You have other options if you want. So this is just the Bowdoin skin. This is, you'll see the scopes. If you look at CBB cat and then you go across the screen, it starts from all and it ends up with manuscript archives. Those are the different scopes that you can choose. So this is just the shot for the, when you come in, the all catalog, it's not scoped. So that's an example of what they did with their skin. This is a shot from Bates, and what I did is I used the music sound recording scope, and I brought up the advanced search so that you could see that we can search different indexes. Now, this search of these different indexes is still a keyword search. It's not a phrase search. So you can search a title in the title box, but it's still keyword searching, it's not phrase searching, because Opera Browser can't do phrase searching. And here's an example of the Colby skin, and in this case, I chose the scores scope, and I did a call number search on M1630, and you see how that it displays, and then you have your facets down on the right so that you can narrow displays. So we were thinking when we set this up, if we have the scopes and if we have the advanced searches, then maybe people will use Opera Browser and not use our local catalogs. What we have found is that a whole lot of the searching on CBB Cat is done in the basic search box and in the all. So for the most part, people are not using the, well, we suspect people are not using the scopes. We can't actually tell that because Opera Browser doesn't report that out. But almost all the searches are from the basic search and not from advanced searches. So this, I just pulled the September stats, so this would have been for last month, and this is at the CBB level. So to get like base stats, we would like just divide by 3. So a little inaccurate, but it's at the system level. So 13,000, 48% searches from the home page, because each of us, when we implemented this, we have the search box so that right from the library homepage you can search Opera Browser if you choose to. And then 40% from the search box within Opera Browser, so you actually go there rather than from the library homepage to do your search. And only 7.6 used advanced searches. As I said, there's no stats on the usage of scopes. We do have stats on how the facets are used. So the format facet is, and this is also in September, used the most, but that's 933. So if you add these all up, it's, you know, like between 1 and 2,000, and you think of the number of searches that were done. So the facets are used, but they're not used a lot. So we found that Opera Browser did not replace our local catalog, even though we thought by using the advanced search and scopes maybe it would. And after it was up for a year, we did debates. We did for the year. We did comparison stats between our local catalog and Opera Browser, and it came out about 50-50. That people were using, you know, for the total number of searches done, about half are done locally, half are done on CBB Cat. We did note that the percentage of local use does go up at the end of the semesters because we're figuring people want just the stuff that they can either get electronically or get their hands on, you know, go upstairs or downstairs for. We're suspecting that the Opera Browser searches are done more for unknown searches and discovery. And also then if you actually are starting at the point to say, you know, starting out to say, well, is this held at CBB? Then maybe you would start with Opera Browser. But the local is done for known searches and also for specific formats. So our abates, our video and our CD scopes are very heavily used. So we know that people are interested in that at the local level. So the implementation, this slide speaks 1,000 words. The contract was signed on September 3rd of 2008. We knew that this was 3 catalogs that they were going to have as sort of as one, and that was something you know, that they hadn't done a lot of. And we were asking for a lot of customization, which is one of the reasons we chose Opera Browser, because they could do that. And for example, Innovative, their Encore product, they had a different philosophy, which is we don't customize. We're going to create this, and then maybe down the road we'll add in customization. So we strongly suspected it would be more than 90 days that the salesperson was telling us. In April of 2010, we met with Jane Burke. Now, Jane Burke is the president of Serial Solutions. So when we bought Aqua Browser, it was owned by Media Lab, and it's a Dutch company, and they had, you know, the product we thought was a great product. They had just pretty much come into North America, and they had found that they couldn't do the sales work, so they had Serial Solutions was their sales rep in North America. So when we were looking at them, for example, University of Chicago was up, and Oklahoma, so there were some big libraries up, but we were pretty much as they were coming into North America. So at some point, Serial Solutions bought Media Lab, and so this is between this time when we were doing the implementation. So in April of 2010, Jane Burke came in and met with us because we were saying, excuse us please, but can we get this finished? So at 2010, the phase 1 implementation was complete, and by that time what we had done is we had said, this is what we really need to go live. We'll push a few things to phase 2 implementation, and that's why we had divided it up at that time. So basically, for the school year coming up for September of 2010, this was up. And then a little bit later, we finished up some of the things. So I think some of the fundamental issues, one was customization. You know, anytime somebody says, oh yes, we can do that, or yes, the system can do that, or yes, the computer can do that, it means, well, yes, it has to be done then. I mean, you know, so remember that. And I think, and this is my own opinion, I think that Media Lab, you know, was a great small company, but like for a company, and you think of a company growing, having to grow, and what all that encompasses, which I have no idea what all it encompasses, but I think that that's what they did not do and they weren't able to do, and that's why Serial Solutions then bought them. But for example, at one point, for a long time, 6 or 12 months, we were doing weekly calls with Jasper, who was the president of Media Lab, and he's there doing our programming for us. So, you know, this might work if you have a very small number of systems you're doing, but if you've gone into North America and you have all these contracts, it's just not going to work. And then we learned when we were talking to Jane Burke that there was no like standard software, like a release of Aqua Browser. All the implementations were individual implementations. So that again, you know, you might be able to do that if you're very small, but you can't do that on a large scale. So when Serial Solutions took over, and this was the day after we had met, I believe, we were at MLA and we had met, and I had done something at MLA. Yes, I did a presentation on Aqua Browser at MLA, and either that afternoon or the next day, I found out that Serial Solutions was going to go to this software as a solution model, meaning that there's going to be a base software and releases, and that they were giving us Aqua Browser was going to have a December 2012 end date. But in the meantime, now Serial Solutions is thinking about their cloud and figuring out what they can do with to have their Summons product, I think, be the front end of that cloud. And they have now come back then, you know, to us and said, no, December 12th is not going to be the end date because they basically, I think they're giving up on this SASS model and they're trying to develop Summon as the front end. So right now, there's no end date for Aqua Browser. So we don't have, you know, we didn't have to like start planning, okay, what's the next system going to be? Because otherwise we would have had to start planning that, you know, 2 years ago. So this is just a list of some things that I documented because we had said that we had wanted these at some time, but these things we were not going to get. So I just put them up in the documentation, so if anybody ever asked me about them, you know, I could go back. One of that, like phrase searching is not an option. We thought that they were going to make that an option. Some things we even decided not to implement, the web crawler and the federated search. And this was a decision by the CBB Shared Catalog Committee, which is the public services arm of the CBB committees. So as far as the system's future goes, we had been looking very closely for a year at WorldCat Local because MainCat for a while was thinking that it might go to WorldCat Local and eventually to WorldShare Management. And so we did an investigation with that, and we have concluded that that is not going to work. And also the head of MainCat has decided that that's not going to work for MainCat either. So we will be with InReach for, you know, a foreseeable 3 to 5 year period or whatever. So that's the question marks on the, okay, now what? Because we thought we might be heading one direction and we're not going that direction anymore, so now things have opened up. Whenever we change systems, we always ask the question, should it be one catalog, one system, or 3? And when we first went to Innovative, I mean, way back in 1990, we were asking, well, when we go to the automation and character base, should we go as one catalog? But at that time in Maine, the bandwidth was not good enough to have one server and 3 different locations for the catalog. Another time, not too long, I think it was before we had, at some point before we got to Opera Browser, we did go and ask about one catalog from Innovative, but the cost at that time had been prohibitive because it's not just the 3 catalogs into one, but they have to take all of our 3 holdings out of MainCat and Express and then reload them again as one. So it involves the 2 InReach systems also. And then we also keep in mind the question now, do users really want a CBB view separate from, say, Nexpress and MainCat? Because what we're finding is that people, the users don't necessarily care if it is from CBB or if it's from MainCat or Nexpress. They just request it and they get it from wherever it comes from. So we're asking ourselves, do we really need to continue this view? Because now the culture is there. The culture that we wanted, with people thinking of the collection as it's fine to have the book there or to have something, you know, have it at another school. That culture's there, so now we can ask the question, well, do we need this strong CBB view or not? And who knows what, where we will go. So there are emails up there, and there's some of the thank yous that